I heard my name before I even stepped into the conference room. Ava's team got lucky. That's all this is. The words, coded in arrogance, floated out from behind the glass door. I froze, heart pounding. The folder in my hands felt suddenly heavier. She secured the contract, sure, but let's be honest. She's a mid-tier manager with a community college degree. We can't risk the company's future on people like her. That voice, David Reynolds, our newly appointed Chief Growth Officer, fresh off his MBA from Wharton, 0 years of actual client work. I took a slow, steadying breath and pushed open the door. They both turned, David in his $3,000 suit, fake polished smile, and James Carter, our CEO, whose expression flickered when he saw me. "Eva," James said, smoothing his tie like nothing had happened. "Perfect timing." David recovered first. "Great news. We've just been discussing your $80 million deal with Helix Corp. Impressive work." I kept my expression neutral. "Thank you. I'll have the signed documents on your desk by Monday." James gave me a tight nod. "Excellent. Actually, that's why we asked you here." I sat down, tucking my folder neatly in front of me. James leaned forward, folding his hands on the mahogany table. "First, congratulations. You've landed the largest contract in the company's history." "Truly." David jumped in. "And that success has shown us the scale of clients we want to pursue going forward. Fortune 500 companies, global accounts, which means..." He gave a fake apologetic smile. "We need a leadership team that reflects that level of excellence." I stared at him. "What are you saying?" James sighed, eyes flicking briefly to the degree framed on the wall behind me. My degree from Lakeview Community College. The one I'd earned while working 2 jobs and raising my son alone. "Ava," James said gently, "we've decided to dissolve the Strategic Development Department, effective immediately." The words hit harder than I expected. "You're dissolving my department?" "You've done excellent groundwork," David continued smoothly. "But to attract high-profile clients, we need leaders with top-tier credentials. Ivy League, global consulting experience." I kept my face blank, but inside something cracked and hardened. 6 years. 6 years of growing this company's client base from nothing. 6 years of traveling, sacrificing holidays, hitting targets they thought were impossible. Now I was being discarded like a temporary intern. I glanced at James. "So this is your thank you for securing an $80 million deal?" He shifted in his chair. "It's not personal, Eva. It's strategy. We're restructuring for growth." I gave them both a polite smile. "Of course. Well, thank you for the opportunity." David looked surprised. He'd expected a fight, maybe tears. I gave him nothing. I shook James's hand, steady and firm. "I wish you both all the best." And I meant it, because I already knew something they didn't. Helix Corp's CEO, Marcia Reynolds, the woman who had personally signed off on the $80 million deal, wasn't just a client. She was a close friend. What David and James didn't know was that I hadn't secured Helix by pitching strategy decks or dropping Harvard names. I'd secured them by solving a $20 million logistics problem that no other firm had touched. By showing up at their warehouses, by sitting with their operations teams on weekends, by proving that I cared about their business as much as they did. And Marcia? She didn't care about Ivy League degrees. She cared about results. As I left the conference room, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcia. "Looking forward to seeing you Monday. Drinks after?" I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely." David's voice echoed in my mind. "We want high-caliber graduates." I walked past the reception, past the interns who barely glanced up. Let them have their restructuring. Because on Monday, in that client meeting, they'd learn exactly what happens when you value pedigree over performance. And I couldn't wait. Monday morning, 9 a.m. I sat in the corner of Brew & Company, a quiet cafe 2 blocks from my former office. My laptop open, a fresh coffee steaming beside me. I wasn't in the boardroom. I wasn't even on company time. But I knew exactly what was happening downtown. At that very moment, James Carter and David Reynolds were welcoming Marcia Reynolds, CEO of Helix Corp., into the executive conference room for what was supposed to be the formal signing of the largest contract in the company's history. I'd rehearsed this scenario all weekend, not with bitterness, but with a strange, clinical curiosity. Would they stumble over my absence? Would they lie? Or would they assume, as men like David always did, that I was replaceable? At 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. Marcia. "You're late," her text read, followed by a winking emoji. I smiled. "Not attending. We'll catch up later." 3 dots appeared. Then her response came. "Excuse me?" I set my phone down, heart beating faster, but not from fear. This wasn't just business. This was a lesson in reality. At 9:23 a.m., a call came through. Philip, one of my former team members. I answered quietly. "Morning, Phil." He didn't even say hello. "Ava, what the hell did you do?" I stirred my coffee, calm. "What happened?" "I'm standing outside the boardroom. It's chaos." His voice dropped. "Marcia walked in, asked for you. James started explaining you'd moved on and the department was being restructured. David tried to jump in with some speech about leadership transitions." I said nothing, waiting. "Marcia cut them off," Philip continued. She said, and I quote, "If Eva's not leading this account, we're walking." I couldn't help the small, satisfied smile. And she got up, just stood up, shook hands, and told them to call her when they were serious about doing business. I let out a low breath. That sounds about right. "Ava, they look like they've been hit by a truck. David's face is..." Philip gave a short laugh. "I wish you could see it." "I don't need to," I replied, standing and gathering my things. "They've made their choices." I ended the call, feeling lighter than I had in months, because the truth was simple. James and David had played a dangerous game, betting that clients would fall for a flashy resume over proven trust. And they'd lost. By 10 a.m., the second call came in. This time, James. I let it ring twice before answering. "James." "Ava." His voice was tight, too friendly. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I smiled as I walked toward my car. "Is that so?" "Yes. Look, there's no easy way to say this. We acted hastily last week. We value your contributions. We want you back to oversee the Helix account." I unlocked my car door, leaning against it. "I see. We'd be happy to discuss a revised compensation package, a leadership role, title upgrade." I let the silence hang, letting him squirm. "Eva, please." His voice cracked slightly. That "please" nearly broke me. Not because I pitied him, but because it confirmed everything I'd suspected. They hadn't respected me. They'd used me, until I became inconvenient. And now that the deal was at risk, I was suddenly valuable again. I exhaled slowly. "James, I appreciate the call. I truly do, but I'm not coming back." A stunned pause. "Eva, this is $80 million on the line." "No, James. It's my integrity on the line." He started to speak, but I ended the call before he could finish. I slid into the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindictive. I was done. I'd spent 6 years pouring everything into a company that saw me as a placeholder. A stepping stone for someone more polished, more connected, more Ivy League. And the second I became inconvenient, they erased me. That wasn't a company I'd fight to save. The real power, the only power worth having, was knowing your worth and refusing to compromise it. As I drove away, my phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Marcia. "Lunch?" I typed back. "Absolutely, my treat." And with that, I left James, David, and their restructuring behind. For good. Tuesday morning, 8:45 a.m. I sat across from Marcia Reynolds in a sunlit corner booth at Greenleaf Bistro, the kind of place downtown executives favored for off-the-record conversations. She stirred her tea, studying me with those sharp eyes that rarely missed a detail. "So, you're officially out?" she asked, her tone casual but her meaning direct. I nodded, sipping my coffee. "As of Friday, restructured out of a job by Monday morning." Marcia shook her head, a low chuckle escaping her. I knew James could be arrogant, but I didn't realize he was suicidal. I smiled, but there was a weight in my chest I couldn't shake. "I'm not bitter." "You should be." I met her gaze. "I'm not. I'm done giving energy to people who don't value it." She sat back, folding her arms. "That's exactly why I want to make you an offer." I raised an eyebrow. "An offer?" She leaned in slightly. "I'm not just the CEO of Helix. I also sit on the advisory board for Klein & Foster, one of the fastest-growing logistics tech firms in the country. We're expanding aggressively. They've been searching for a business development director for months." I blinked. "I know of them. Solid reputation. Tech-forward. And client-focused," Marcia added. "Exactly your style." I hesitated, setting my cup down. "You want me to interview?" "I want you to have a conversation," she corrected, "with their CEO, Aaron Klein. I already told him about you. He's interested. Very interested." I wasn't sure what surprised me more, that Marcia had set this up without asking, or that I didn't feel even a flicker of hesitation. "You're serious?" I asked. Marcia smiled. "I'm dead serious. And if you end up there, let's just say Helix is always looking for reliable partners." My heart thudded quietly. "You'd move the deal?" She shrugged, sipping her tea. "We signed nothing. And frankly, I'm not about to invest $80 million with a company that treats people like you the way they did. Integrity matters to me." I met her eyes. It matters to me too. For the first time in days, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. Not a rebound offer. Not a lifeline. An opportunity. Real. Earned. By noon, I was sitting across from Aaron Klein in his minimalist office. Sleek, modern, no mahogany conference tables in sight. Aaron was mid-40s, dressed in a crisp button-down, no tie, sleeves rolled. He greeted me with a firm handshake and none of the corporate small talk I'd grown used to. "Marcia thinks highly of you," he said, getting straight to the point. "And Marcia doesn't give out praise lightly." I smiled. She's a tough one. "Exactly why I called this meeting." He leaned back in his chair. "I've read up on your work with Helix and other clients. You build relationships, not just contracts. That's the only way they last," I replied. Aaron nodded slowly. "That's rare, and it's exactly what we need." I waited, letting him take the lead. "We've grown by 60% in the last 2 years, but we're ready for the next leap, and that requires someone who understands both business development and client loyalty. Someone who doesn't just chase numbers." I folded my hands. "And you think that's me?" He smiled. "I know that's you." There it was. Director, no hedging, and no questions about where I went to school. "What would the role look like?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Director of Business Development, reporting directly to me. Full autonomy to build your strategy and your team. We'll support you, and stay out of your way." I felt my pulse quicken. "Compensation?" He handed me a folder. Inside, a detailed offer letter. Base salary. Higher than anything I'd made before. Bonus structure. Aggressive but fair. Equity. Meaningful. I read through it twice, my heart thudding louder with every line. "I won't insult you by asking for an immediate answer," Aaron said, "but I hope you'll consider it." I closed the folder gently. "I don't need time." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "I'm in." Aaron smiled and extended his hand. "Welcome aboard, Eva." As we shook hands, I felt it. something I hadn't felt at Orion in years. Respect. I walked out of that office not with a job offer, but with a new beginning, and I couldn't wait to see where it would lead. My first official day at Klein & Foster was nothing like my old first days at Orion. No formal HR tour, no laminated employee handbook, no whispered comments about where I went to school. Just a simple welcome from Erin, a firm handshake, and a clear message: do what you do best. And I did. I spent the first week meeting every department head. Not in scheduled meetings, but at their desks, in their spaces. I listened more than I talked. Asked questions no one else seemed to ask, about process bottlenecks, client frustrations, internal gaps. By the second week, I had my strategy drafted. Not a flashy 100-slide presentation, just a focused plan built on one belief I'd held since the day I started in business. Clients don't buy products. They buy people. I pitched Erin the idea of a client-first division. Small, agile teams designed around long-term partnerships, not short-term wins. He barely glanced at the numbers before nodding. Build it. So I did, and the first person I called was Philip. He answered on the first ring. Ava? I smiled. Ever considered a change? The silence on the other end lasted only 2 seconds. When do I start? Philip joined the following Monday. By the end of the month, 2 more former colleagues followed. People I'd trusted at Orion, who, like me, had grown tired of being overlooked in favor of pedigrees and politics. We weren't poaching. We were building something better. By month 3, my team had secured 3 major contracts, including a $25 million deal that had been in Orion's pipeline for over a year but never closed. Marcia made good on her word, too. Helix officially partnered with Klein & Foster, transferring their $80 million deal to us. That was the moment everything changed. Word travels fast in this industry. Within weeks, clients I hadn't spoken to in years started reaching out. Old contacts from conferences, industry partners I'd built quiet relationships with. And one by one, they asked me the same question. Why Klein & Foster? I gave them the honest answer, because here results mattered more than resumes. Because here, client trust wasn't a buzzword. Because here, talent wasn't defined by where you got your degree. I didn't badmouth Orion. I didn't have to. The facts spoke louder than anything I could have said. By month 6, Klein & Foster's market share had grown by nearly 40%. We weren't just landing new clients. We were quietly taking Orion's. I never intended it as revenge. But in the business world, success often speaks louder than revenge ever could. One afternoon, as I wrapped up a client call, Philip walked into my office, a glass-walled space that overlooked downtown. Simple, but mine. He set a printed report on my desk. You might want to see this. I glanced down. The headline made me pause. Orion Tech reports second consecutive quarter of declining revenue. I skimmed the article. Helix gone. 2 key clients signed with competitors. Stock down 25%. Internal restructuring rumored. I leaned back in my chair, tapping the page lightly. This was never about taking them down, I said quietly. Philip gave a small nod. Number. But it turns out treating good people like they're disposable has consequences. I met his eyes. It always does. That afternoon, my phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number. I hesitated before answering. Ava, it's James. His voice was flat, strained. I leaned back in my chair. Didn't expect this call. A long pause. I wanted to check in, see how things are going. I almost laughed. They're going well, James. Very well. He cleared his throat. I won't take up your time. Just, if you ever want to have a conversation, I'd be open to it. I let the silence stretch before replying, Thank you, but I think we're on very different paths now. I ended the call gently but firmly, because sometimes the most powerful answer isn't anger, it's moving on. That night, I walked into my apartment, dropped my keys on the counter, and sat down with a glass of wine. I wasn't the same woman who'd been fired 6 months earlier. I wasn't chasing respect. I had built it. on my terms. And I finally understood something I wished I'd learned years ago. When people show you what they value, believe them, then choose to value yourself more. 3 months later, I stood in front of a glass wall at the Global Logistics Summit in Chicago, watching the city skyline blur beneath a soft spring rain. The conference was packed. Industry leaders, rising startups, investors. Klein & Foster wasn't just attending this year. We were headlining, and I was giving the keynote. When Aaron first suggested it, I almost laughed. Me? Speaking in front of 1,000 executives? But then I realized, why not me? I wasn't there because of a fancy diploma or a corporate pedigree. I was there because our client portfolio had tripled in under a year. Because we'd closed deals others said were impossible. Because our retention rate was nearly perfect. That morning, I stepped on stage, heart pounding, but steady. I spoke about client trust, about long-term partnerships, about how results outlast resumes. And when I walked off, the applause was real. So were the conversations that followed. By noon, I had handshakes and dinner invitations from companies I'd once only dreamed of working with, including some former Orion clients. And then I saw him, James Carter. He stood by the registration desk, scanning the crowd like a man looking for an escape route. I almost walked past. But then his eyes met mine. He approached, slower than I remembered him ever walking. Ava. James. I kept my voice even, professional. He gave a small, tight smile. You were impressive this morning. Thank you. A pause. He shifted awkwardly. I wanted to reach out sooner. I nodded, but didn't. He exhaled, looking down at his hands. Orion's not in a good place. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. We lost 3 major accounts this quarter. David's gone. The board asked for his resignation after the Helix fallout. I met his eyes. And you? A flicker of something. Regret? Exhaustion. Crossed his face. I'm still standing. Barely. The board's considering options. I tilted my head. Options like restructuring? Options like selling. His voice dropped lower. We're looking for a merger partner or a buyer. For a moment, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not for the company, for the people inside it. The ones who worked hard. The ones who stayed loyal. The ones who, like me, had been dismissed when they became inconvenient. I see, I said quietly. James straightened. I came to ask if you'd consider coming back. I blinked. You're serious? He nodded. We need leadership, credibility. Clients trust you. I stared at him for a long moment. 6 months ago, I would have dreamed of hearing those words. Now, they felt hollow. You didn't value me when it mattered, I said evenly. Why now? He swallowed hard. Because I was wrong. For the first time since we met, his voice held no arrogance. I was wrong about you, about what really drives this business. And I'm asking, as a last chance for Orion, help us. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't trying to punish him. I just knew my answer wasn't simple. James, I said finally, it's not personal, but I'm exactly where I want to be. His shoulders slumped, just a fraction. I hope you figure it out, I added, for your team's sake. He gave a slow nod. So do I. As he turned to leave, I stopped him. For what it's worth. I hope this humbles you, and I hope it makes you a better leader than you were to me. He looked back, something almost like gratitude flickering in his eyes. I think it already has, he said softly. And then he was gone. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space where he'd been. That wasn't how I imagined this would end. But maybe that was the point. It wasn't about watching him fail. It was about knowing I didn't need his approval. I'd built something better, and this time I wasn't leaving it behind. 3 months later, I stood in the glass-walled conference room of Klein and Foster's headquarters, overlooking the skyline of Dallas. My team, Philip, Marcia, and Aaron, sat around the table reviewing the final numbers for the quarter. Our growth had exceeded every projection. We didn't just meet targets, we broke them. Helix's deal was thriving. Our client retention rate hit an all-time high. And Orion? They'd been acquired in a quiet, desperate merger by a private equity firm. I hadn't heard from James again, but I didn't need to. I wasn't chasing closure anymore. This meeting wasn't about him. It was about us. Aaron leaned forward. Ava, when you joined, I knew you'd bring results. But this... He shook his head, almost smiling. You've transformed how we do business. Philip grinned. And how we treat people. I glanced around the table at the people I'd come to respect, and who respected me back. It wasn't about titles anymore. It was about impact. When the meeting ended, Aaron caught me before I left. Walk with me? He asked. We strolled through the quiet hallway, past open workspaces buzzing with quiet focus. Aaron stopped near the balcony, folding his arms. I wanted to say thank you. I raised an eyebrow. For what? For betting on us? For betting on yourself? I smiled. You gave me the freedom to do what I do best. He nodded, then turned slightly. The board met this morning. We're restructuring, expanding, and we want you to take on a bigger role. I met his eyes. Bigger how? Chief Commercial Officer, reporting directly to me. Full authority over business development, client relations, and strategic partnerships. I stared at him, stunned. Aaron? He lifted a hand. No pressure. You've earned this. Every bit of it. And we want you to grow with us. For a long moment, I said nothing. Not because I doubted myself, but because I realized I wasn't chasing anyone's validation anymore. I'd built this, on my terms, with my values. I nodded slowly. I'm in. Aaron smiled. I knew you'd say that. We shook hands, and this time it felt right. Because this wasn't a company using me to close a deal. This was a place that saw me, as I was, and valued it. That evening, as the office quieted and the city lights blinked on, I sat in my office reflecting on the last year. Everything I'd lost. Everything I'd gained. I thought about James and Orion, and how easy it would have been to stay bitter. But bitterness doesn't build futures. I'd learned that the hard way. Instead, I chose growth. I chose to bet on the person I'd always been. The one they underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed. And I won. Philip poked his head in. We're heading out for drinks. You coming? I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. As I grabbed my bag, my eyes caught the framed photo on my desk. A simple snapshot from our team's first client dinner. Laughter, casual clothes, no suits. A reminder of what really mattered. Not power, not titles, not empty approval from the people who never saw you, but respect. Earned, given, shared. I left the office with my team, stepping into the warm evening air, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Free. The world hadn't changed, corporate games still existed, egos still ruled boardrooms. But I had changed. I'd learned that when people show you who they are, believe them. And when you show yourself what you're capable of, never forget it, because the only approval you'll ever truly need is your own.